Damnation Alley wasn't just another post-apocalyptic movie. It was supposed to be bigger than Star Wars. 20th Century Fox bet everything on it, giving it a massive budget while treating Star Wars like a weird B-movie. Then Star Wars changed cinema forever, and Damnation Alley became one of the biggest flops in Hollywood history.
Just so I don't have to re-enlist.
No, Tanner, you don't have to re-enlist. As long as it's clear, I'm in charge.
These are 16 facts about the forgotten film that built a $350,000 super vehicle, used real nuclear missile footage, and accidentally predicted August 2026 as the peak of nuclear tensions. 1. The Star Wars death sentence. In 1977, 20th Century Fox had two major science fiction films in production simultaneously. They had to decide how to allocate resources. The studio was absolutely convinced Damnation Alley, a post-apocalyptic survival story based on a Roger Zelazny novel, would be their blockbuster hit. Massive production budget, premium release dates, aggressive marketing. Meanwhile, they treated George Lucas's Star Wars like a weird experimental B-movie that probably wouldn't make its money back. When Star Wars exploded into an unexpected global phenomenon that shattered every box office record, Fox panicked. They desperately tried to re-edit Damnation Alley in post-production to make it look more space-like and exciting, adding random visual effects, cutting character development. The result was a disjointed narrative mess that confused audiences and flopped catastrophically. One of the most embarrassing miscalculations in studio history. 2. The $350,000 Landmaster Beast. The real star of Damnation Alley isn't any of the human actors. It's the Landmaster, an absolutely massive 12-wheeled articulated amphibious survival vehicle that looks like something from a fever dream. Custom designed and built by legendary Hollywood vehicle designer Dean Jeffries, who had previously created the original Batmobile for the 1960s Batman television series. The Landmaster cost $350,000 in 1976 dollars, approximately $1.8 million in 2024 currency. It wasn't just a non-functional prop, so obsessively over-engineered that it could actually float in water, climb 60-degree inclines, and drive through almost any terrain. The Landmaster is one of the very few major movie vehicles that still exist today in fully functional condition. It occasionally appears at car shows, where it remains an engineering marvel that impresses automotive enthusiasts decades later. Then 3. The Haze CGI Failure. The film's signature visual element, the perpetually glowing radioactive orange sky, was supposed to be groundbreaking. An experimental photographic process called solarization that manipulated film exposure and color chemistry. The film stock was so chemically sensitive and the process so poorly understood that the glowing sky effects kept bleeding into the actors' faces and bodies in post-production, making them look like they were literally melting or suffering from radiation burns. The studio spent an additional $1 million, an enormous sum in 1977, desperately trying to fix the sky effects. The delays caused the film to miss its planned pre-Star Wars theatrical launch window. By the time Damnation Alley reached theaters, Star Wars had already redefined audience expectations for science fiction spectacle. The compromised effects looked primitive and cheap by comparison. 4. The Real Cockroach Horror. In the infamous Cockroach attack sequence set in the ruins of Salt Lake City, the production used literally thousands of live Madagascar hissing cockroaches, enormous insects several inches long. The insects were supposedly trained by professional animal handlers. But the moment cameras started rolling, they immediately escaped containment and completely infested the entire soundstage. The crew had to duct tape their pants cuffs shut and tuck clothing into boots to prevent roaches from crawling up their legs during filming. Most of the horrifying crunching sounds you hear aren't post-production effects. They're actual sounds of real cockroaches being stepped on and crushed by actors who were genuinely disgusted and terrified. The infestation was so severe that the soundstage had to be professionally fumigated after production wrapped. 5. Jan Michael Vincent's action regret lead actor Jan Michael Vincent was at the absolute peak of his pretty boy heartthrob fame when cast. He reportedly despised the screenplay, only accepted the role for the enormous paycheck. During brutal desert location shoots in extremely hot conditions, Vincent spent most of his time hiding in his air-conditioned trailer playing guitar, explicitly refusing to come out until the Landmaster was warmed up and ready so he could minimize his time in the heat. Vincent later said Damnation Alley marked the beginning of the end for his leading man Hollywood status. The film's failure damaged his career trajectory, typecast him in increasingly low-budget action roles. His attitude on set contributed to the production's difficulties and tension. 6. The Scorpion Fishing Lines. For sequences featuring giant mutated scorpions, the budget had been so completely exhausted by the Landmaster construction and sky effect disasters that there was no money remaining for expensive animatronic creatures. The desperate solution: use actual live scorpions filmed on miniature desert sets, then optically enlarge them in post-production. To make the scorpions attack on cue and move aggressively toward specific marks, the crew tied nearly invisible monofilament fishing lines to the creature's stingers, physically pulling them in desired directions. Modern animal rights activists would be horrified, but in 1977 Hollywood, it was just considered standard practical effects methodology. Nobody questioned the ethics of torturing live animals for entertainment. 7. The nuclear opening is real. The absolutely chilling footage of intercontinental ballistic missiles launching during the opening credits isn't a Hollywood special effect or miniature work. It's actual declassified Pentagon documentary footage of real Minuteman missile tests conducted by the United States military. Director Jack Smite deliberately chose authentic military footage rather than fake effects. He wanted audiences to feel the genuine weight and horrifying reality of actual doomsday weaponry before the fictional survival story began. The decision gives the opening sequence documentary-like gravity that fictional effects couldn't replicate, making the nuclear holocaust feel disturbingly plausible. The government was surprisingly willing to provide the footage for entertainment purposes during the height of Cold War tensions. The 8. George Peppard's A-Team practice. George Peppard, who played Major Denton, essentially used Damnation Alley as a dry run for his future iconic role as Colonel John Hannibal Smith on the A-Team. Peppard insisted on wearing his character's military flight suit even during breaks and when cameras weren't rolling, claimed the costume helped him feel the radiation and stay in character psychologically. More impressively, Peppard was the only actor who actually learned how to drive and operate the incredibly complex Landmaster vehicle for real, rather than just pretending while being towed by hidden operators. His mechanical aptitude and commitment to practical authenticity foreshadowed the hands-on approach he'd bring to the A-Team's vehicle stunts years later. 9. The Flood Miracle. During location filming in the California desert, the production was hit by a completely unexpected massive flash flood, a rare meteorological event in that arid region. The sudden deluge destroyed tens of thousands of dollars worth of cameras, lighting equipment, and set construction, completely washed away the elaborate survival camp set that had taken days to build. The only major piece of equipment that didn't move at all during the catastrophic flood was the Landmaster itself. The vehicle's enormous weight, several tons, and its massive custom tires kept it firmly anchored. The crew actually used the stationary Landmaster as a refuge and rescue vehicle, climbing onto it to avoid the floodwaters, using it to rescue stranded staff members. The incident proved the vehicle's engineering was genuinely impressive beyond its movie prop status. 10. The Radio Voice Secret. The mysterious female voice broadcasting on emergency radio frequencies, the signal the survivors track throughout their journey, was performed by a deliberately uncredited actress. Her identity has never been officially revealed. Director Jack Smite gave very specific direction. She needed to sound simultaneously angelic but robotic, keeping audiences uncertain whether there were actually living humans broadcasting or whether they were just hearing a pre-recorded automated loop from a dead civilization. The ambiguity was intentional, creating dramatic tension about whether the survivors were heading toward rescue or chasing a ghost signal. The disembodied voice became one of the film's most effective elements, creating hope and dread simultaneously. 11. Reusing the Logan's run sets. After the Sky Effect disaster consumed so much budget, the production was financially desperate. The art department borrowed several expensive matte paintings and physical miniature set pieces directly from the 1976 hit Logan's Run, produced at the same studio just a year earlier. If the ruined post-apocalyptic cities look strangely familiar to viewers who've seen Logan's Run, it's because they're literally the same exact miniatures and painted backdrops, just repainted with additional nuclear soot, weathering, and rubble to disguise their origin. The recycling was an open secret among the crew. Most audiences never noticed they were seeing the same destroyed future cityscape in two completely different films released within months of each other. 12. The Suicidal original script. In Roger Zelazny's original 1969 novel, the protagonist isn't a clean-cut heroic Air Force officer. He's a violent criminal biker named Hell Tanner. Essentially, a Hell's Angels-style outlaw forced into the cross-country mission as an alternative to execution. The studio completely transformed the character into a conventional Hollywood hero to make him family-friendly, stripping away all the moral complexity and anti-authoritarian edge that made Zelazny's novel interesting. Zelazny was so deeply disappointed by the sanitized adaptation that he explicitly refused to allow his name used prominently in marketing materials. The based on the novel by Roger Zelazny credit is buried in fine print rather than featured. Zelazny actively distanced himself from the production. 13. The missing 18 minutes. Almost 20 minutes of crucial character development was brutally cut from the theatrical release, a desperate post-production attempt to make the pacing faster and more competitive with Star Wars. The deleted material included an entire subplot about a slow-acting mutant plague gradually killing the survivors, creating urgency for their mission to reach a rumored medical facility. Without these scenes providing context, the character's desperate final dash to Albany feels rushed, poorly explained, and emotionally hollow. The cuts damaged narrative coherence, left audiences confused about why characters were making certain decisions. The deleted footage has never been officially restored, though scripts and stills prove it was filmed. 14. The laser sound origin. The distinctive sound effects for the high-tech energy weapons were created by hitting a high-tension electrical power line cable with a hammer, recording the resulting metallic twang and resonance. This is the exact same practical technique that Ben Burtt used to create the iconic blaster sounds for Star Wars, being produced simultaneously. When both films discovered they'd independently arrived at the same methodology, it led to a minor competitive sound design war between productions, each claiming they'd invented the technique first. 15. The August 2026 connection. Extremely subtle background prop detail visible in the Launch Control Military Command Center during the opening nuclear war sequence, a wall calendar and safety inspection clipboard. While Damnation Alley was produced in 1976 to 1977, the final safety check signature date handwritten on the prop clipboard is dated August 2026. A deliberate 50-year future prediction by the props department about when nuclear tensions between superpowers would reach their catastrophic peak. Whether random speculation, dark humor, or based on actual geopolitical forecasting is unknown, but it's become another example of 1970s science fiction accidentally pointing to the mid-2020s as a significant inflection point for human civilization. 16. The Albany ending irony. The film's uplifting final sequence shows the exhausted survivors finally reaching a pristine, green, thriving Albany, New York. A miracle of civilization that survived the nuclear holocaust intact. In reality, every frame of that lush East Coast footage was filmed in a local public park in Southern California, nowhere near New York. The actors and camera operators had to carefully frame every shot to avoid showing distinctive California palm trees visible in the background, which would have instantly destroyed the East Coast geographical illusion. But the production couldn't afford to actually film anywhere near Albany, a perfect symbol of Damnation Alley's compromised ambitions, promising one thing and delivering a cheap approximation. So if the world ended tomorrow and you had to choose your survival vehicle, would you rather have a lightsaber or a 12-wheeled Landmaster that can float and climb mountains? Let me know in the comments if the giant cockroaches or mutant scorpions were scarier. If you want more deep dives into movies that studios bet the house on and lost spectacularly, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.